Hi guys, my name's John and I'm a trained veterinarian and biologist. And today we're talking about career paths into working in wildlife rescue, rehabilitation and release, as well as captive breeding, a massive subject in itself. And we're going to have a special focus on the world's rarest crocodilian, the Siamese crocodile. My guest is Jeremy Fan, the director of the Laos Conservation Trust for Wildlife in Southeast Asia. So, what can you expect in the next half hour? This is not a natural history documentary, although I will endeavour to include as much natural history as I possibly can. But instead, what we'll present is a possible career path if you want to work for a conservation charity in rescue, rehabilitation and release. It's an interview in which I ask the questions I wish I'd asked 35 years ago when starting my own wildlife career. And before we go any further, I would like to say thank you to my subscribers. Without you, there would be no channel. Working with tropical wildlife and living the dream of conservation leadership looks like this. There are 26 species of crocodilian around the world. The Siamese has the dubious distinction of falling into the top 4 rarest. It is critically endangered, with a population of fewer than 1,000 and decreasing. It evolved about 500,000 years ago and is found in Cambodia, Laos, Thailand, and Indonesia. Jeremy, how would you describe Siamese crocodile conservation in Laos today?
So I think Siamese crocodile conservation has it's started to take hold. So not our organization, but the Wildlife Conservation Society, they've actually had a program going on in Laos for years. Our program is a bit newer. There's still definitely a lot of work to be done to bring the population back up to, a viable population that is strong. And I think there's a lot of stuff to be done for local communities, education, habitat protection, and we hope to be a part of that and to kind of complement the work that's already been done here, but also to progress it further than it's already been.
Hmm. What jobs does the situation with Siamese crocodile and indeed conservation in its widest sense in Laos generate?
Oh, that's a tough one. So in terms of Siamese crocodile, at least with the work we're doing. So we're a rescue rehab and release facility. We also do education for not just local people, but tourists and all that type of stuff. So the jobs that you can find with us are very varied. We have everything from husbandry professionals to education people working with volunteers, all of that type of stuff. So yeah, we have a lot of different jobs that can come from it. In terms of Siamese crocodile conservation, we are looking at people that need to do outreach for local communities, a lot of education that needs to happen in order to reintroduce basically these, apex predators back into the wetlands where a lot of local people have their livelihoods. They go fishing, they may bathe in them, that kind of deal. So there's a big component of careers that we need to kind of have an educational component. And then, of course, on the more practical side, the more working with the crocodiles specifically, you're looking at kind of husbandry, observation type type jobs. Keeper, I guess you could think of them a little bit like a zookeeper almost. So watching the crocodiles when they do build nests, when they do lay eggs, being able to safely get these eggs out, incubate them, and then we raise the hatchlings until they're about 2 years old or about a meter long, and then hopefully get them released into the wild after you've done all the community work to get the community engaged to have these animals introduced back into where they used to be found.
Mhm. And Jeremy, what do you do?
So, yeah, what do I do? I think I wear a lot of hats, as most NGO directors, or really any position. I think a lot of different people do a lot of different things. I think my main job is coordinating everything that goes on site here. So I run the Wildlife Rescue Center. I help oversee the different programs that we have, whether that's on the education side, whether that's on the animal husbandry side, help make decisions on the vet side, even though I'm definitely not a vet. But for some of the other, when it's kind of looking at management, I can kind of, play a role in there a bit. And then of course, we also have volunteers that come through. So, helping to mitigate what's going on with the volunteers and kind of deal with that type of stuff. So and then, of course, any HR issues with staff, budgeting, payroll, uh, grant writing, partnerships, sponsors. Yeah, I think you name it, and it's pretty much in my job description, or I guess lack thereof, because it's kind of everything. But yeah, so I do a bit of everything, as I think most people in my position would do.
Mhm. And Jeremy, what skills do you need to direct a conservation centre in Laos?
Oh, I think a big one is flexibility, patience. I think the work ethic, the culture, the people, it's very different than maybe what a lot of us are used to, especially coming from, a more Western country, they would say. So myself, I'm from the US. We get a lot of Europeans here as well, and visiting, or also some of our staff. And I think, our work, the way we work is much different, in terms of it's kind of like work, 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 and kind of the family and everything sometimes comes second, or the free time, things like that. Where I think here it's the opposite. So definitely finding a good balance of that is really, really nice. But also one of my favorite things about living here, because people are so kind, and because there's such a community feeling, that it's really nice. But you definitely have to have the flexibility, because one of the biggest sayings here, one of our favorite sayings, is "Bobinyang," which means no problem. So it might mean that, okay, you scheduled to do something at 9 o'clock, but maybe it doesn't start happening until 11 o'clock. And that's just, you have to be able to deal with this, because if you don't, you will for sure not be able to make it. So yeah, I think that's a big key to it. And just being adaptable, being able to change things on the fly. I think in conservation work, especially with wildlife or animals, you have to be able to adapt quickly. You never know what every day is going to look like. Just today, we have to do a bear surgery. We had four baby civets come in. We had an owl come in that's injured. We're also feeding a baby pangolin, a baby muntjac, a baby red-shank Duke Langer. So we're very busy, and that changes all the time, constantly. So yeah, I think that's adaptability, flexibility, all of that is probably the the number one characteristic you need.
And Jeremy, do you do it for personal satisfaction, professional recognition, or the money?
For sure, the money. I think we all know that when you work in conservation, you make a lot of money. No, I mean, I think obviously it's a bit of personal satisfaction, because I'm following my passion, right? So this is something that I've always wanted to do. I'm absolutely in my dream job. And so there's the personal satisfaction there, but I think also there's a bit of wanting
Wait until
to
she
make
will
a
start to
difference,
see because
even if it's
she
something
very
small, even if
about
it's in the
very
life
shy.
of one animal
So
or
just
introducing one person to
don't give
conservation or,
her
you
suck
know,
the air.
saving an animal from the illegal wildlife trade. I think that draws me a bit more than even my own personal satisfaction, of course. But obviously that plays a role in it, or else I wouldn't be here. But definitely not for the money. I think that's clear for anyone who knows anyone in this field. So, and you know that for sure.
And Jeremy, how did your career develop, please?
So I mean, it all started from when I was really young, a lot of wildlife people or animal people, I think, have an affinity for wildlife while they're little, whether it's, in nature, catching frogs, looking at insects, that kind of thing. I think that's kind of where it starts. And then when I was in high school, learning about careers that you could be a zoologist, and you could, work at a zoo and be a zookeeper and things like that. And you didn't just have to be a veterinarian. I think that was my whole thing before I got to high school was that the expectation was if you want to work with animals, you have to be a vet. And I didn't really want to do that because I'm not really on the medicine side of things, definitely on the caring side, but not so much the medical. And so that took me to Michigan State University, where I did a degree in zoology with a concentration in zoo and aquarium science. Through there, I actually did a study abroad in Uganda where I met Dr. Nancy Stevens while I was there, and she became my advisor and kind of the one who pushed me into my path that I'm on today. So the study abroad was about primates and birds, and she's a primatologist, and she then hooked me up for my internship, which I did in Vietnam at the Endangered Primate Rescue Center there, and absolutely fell in love with it and realized that, I wanted to be on the front lines of conservation. I didn't know when that would be. I didn't know how long that would take me. But I knew that at some point in my career, that's what I wanted to do. And after I graduated with my bachelor's degree, I got my master's at Ohio University, where she was actually my advisor there, and that was in environmental studies. And I actually went back for my thesis work to the EPRC in Vietnam, where I studied monkeys there. And then after that, I became a zookeeper. So I worked at the Kansas City Zoo for about 2.5 years. And then I worked at the Cincinnati Zoo and Botanical Garden for another 2.5 years. And then, very uninteresting and anticlimactic, this job posting was on Facebook. And it was actually for the deputy director position at LCTW, my current position. And there were the other directors back then in 2018, so this was almost 8 years ago. And I applied for the job. I got it, and that kind of took me on my journey here, and I've been here ever since. And about a year after I got the position, the old directors they left, and I took over as director. So I've been kind of running it since 2019. And yeah, it has its ups and downs. It's been a very interesting 7 years as director, but I absolutely love it.
Brilliant. And Jeremy, can you run us through the methods, the protocols involved in breeding Siamese crocodiles?
Yeah, I wish it were a bit more technical or complicated, but to be honest, it's quite easy. We're very lucky. So I'll do a little bit of background on our Siamese crocodile population because it is a very interesting story. So LCTW, we used to be located on the grounds of the Laos Zoo, which was the only national zoo in the country. And we actually took that over in 2018, and we turned it into more of a rescue center, conservation center, and kind of away from the zoo model, which here in Southeast Asia, there's not that many good zoos. And so, kind of, taking it away from entertainment and just focusing on conservation, rescue, rehab, release, that kind of thing. And some of the zoo animals that were still there, part of them were these crocodiles, these Siamese crocodiles. And we weren't 100% sure on the species of all of them. There were some that were already genetically tested some years ago before I even came to Laos. And those were confirmed to be Siamese, but then we had about over 80 other individuals that were not genetically tested yet. So when we actually had to relocate, so this is a whole nother story, but we had to relocate our
Indeed.
entire rescue center at the starting in 2023, we got the news. So we've only recently landed here at our new site. We've only been here for about a year or so. But we had to relocate over 500 animals due to some funding through ASAP, the Asian Species Action Plan. We were able to get funding to help us pay for the genetic testing of all of these crocodiles. So we tested about 85 individuals or so, adult crocodiles, and almost all of them came back as purebred. So then that also meant we had to move 75 adult Siamese crocodiles within a very short period of time to our new site. And that takes some guts, I will say. And I have my team to thank for that. They did an absolute excellent job. But essentially, once we got all of that, we figured out that these crocodiles were Siamese. Then now we're actually kind of more into the breeding of them. And essentially, our setup right now is very simple. We have one very large enclosure, and in there we have all of our crocodiles. And basically, every year, nature takes its course, breeding season comes around. You hear a lot of the mating calls. You see a lot of the kind of mating rituals, I guess you could say. The males attracting the females, and then of course the females will then go up on the land area of the pool, and they will make their nests. So they make their nests around what month is it? It's April now, actually. So yes, around now, because actually last month I think they started already. And then around June or July is when we actually start to see um, hatchlings start to come out. This last year was the first year that we actually dug up the eggs. So we actually went into the enclosure with the 75 adults. And this takes a lot of very good coordination with the team, making sure everyone is safe. For the most part, it's not an issue, but every once in a while, you have some of those, mama crocodiles that want to be a bit protective over their nests. So we just have to make sure, all of our team are watching, being vigilant while the people collecting the eggs are collecting them so that they're safe and that, a croc doesn't sneak up
Mm-hmm.
behind them. This past year, we collected around 400 eggs, actually, which was, yeah, not what we were expecting. It was a lot more than we thought we were going to get. Out of those 400, we had about 70 survive, and they're currently doing well
Indeed.
now. Um, and this was our first time incubating these eggs. We think some of them just weren't fertile. Some of them, they didn't do well while they were in the nest. Some of them didn't do well when we took them out and they were being incubated. But I mean, it's always a learning process. And so yeah, now we have those 70 individuals that hopefully by the end of next year, we will be able to release them back into the wild here in Laos in some of the wetland areas. But it does take, I think the harder part than breeding them is actually figuring out where to release them and making sure, of course, the government has to be on board with our release program and everything that we're doing in Laos when it comes to doing this. So also working with the government, working with the local people, like I mentioned earlier about, community engagement and getting them on board to release these, 3-meter crocodiles into their wetlands that they spend every day in. But the good thing is that Siamese crocodiles are not known to be particularly aggressive, unlike some other species where there's been some issues with humans and wildlife conflict there. But Siamese are usually a bit more chill. Maybe that has to do with the Lao culture here. It kind of feeds into them as well. But yeah, I think in terms of that, when it comes even the incubation process, and we're not experts in Siamese crocodiles, so we look to the experts for advice. And so talking to them, we get advice on how to incubate them, how to do it. And so it's very simple. We use a styrofoam box, have some air holes in it, some layers of sand and soil and leaf litter, and basically just put them in a dark room and let them just do it themselves. We mist them every once in a while to make sure the humidity is good. But I mean, for the most part, it's quite easy, I will say. So yeah, it's more the release part, which we're getting to hopefully in the near future. That is quite a bit more difficult than the actual breeding of the crocodiles.
Mm. And Jeremy, what's the status of the Siamese crocodile in Laos? Are they critically endangered or what?
Yeah, so on the IUCN Red List, Siamese crocodiles, they're listed as, critically endangered. In Laos, there's about probably 200 individuals for the entire country. And to put that into perspective and kind of the impact that LCTW can have on the population is that we have close to 200 individuals here. So essentially, in our captive setting, we have the same amount as wild crocodiles. So I think we're in a very good spot to really boost that population and help contribute to essentially reversing the red for this species. So getting them out of that critically endangered, um, you know, line that the IUCN has them under, and hopefully push them more towards, one day not threatened or something like this. That would be the pipe dream, I guess.
Mm. So I get the impression that the captive breeding of the Siamese crocodiles, you're really letting nature take its course in many phases of the breeding program. But for the more complicated parts, and I'm guessing that's really securing release sites, if I'm not wrong.
Yes. Yes.
What skills do new entrants into conservation in Laos, and particularly Siamese crocodile conservation, what skills do they need?
I think again, it kind of comes back to what we talked about a little bit earlier when it was, the flexibility and the adaptability. And I think for anyone that works in Laos or wanting to get into it, it's yes, you may have, your mindset that I want to do this. I want to, I chose this area where I know it would be a really good release site for crocodiles. But then you may have to change it because maybe the government doesn't agree, or you may have to be able to, wait for 6 months to a year to get everything in order, where in your mind, your timeline is much faster than that. So I think being able to be flexible, and sometimes that's hard, new entrants into conservation, eager, ready to go get them, ready to, change the world, which is great. We definitely don't want to squash that at all, because if you don't have that, then you're not going to make it anyway. But I think being able to be like, okay, I need to take a step back. I need to see how we're going to progress, what we're going to do next, how the government's going to look at it, um, how we can make sure the community is safe, how the people are safe, what we're going to do if a crocodile does decide to go up and, be aggressive towards someone, or is there enough food availability in that wetland to allow this crocodile population to take off. So kind of looking at all those variables and yeah, just being flexible and adaptable for whatever is thrown at you during this time, essentially.
Hmm. And Jeremy, what is the level of hazard with Siamese crocodiles? Historically, has there been conflict between humans and Siamese crocodiles in the wild? Have there been casualties? What's the level of risk?
So from what I understand, the risk is actually quite low when looking at this species in particular. So it's not, there haven't been many recorded cases of Siamese crocodile attacks or yeah, anything like that from what I know of.
Mhm. What
So
animals do you have at the sanctuary at the facility at the moment, Jeremy?
We have actually quite a bit. So of course we have our Siamese crocodiles. We have a couple different species of gibbons. So we have northern white cheek gibbon, we have northern yellow cheek gibbon, we have southern white cheek gibbon. We also have a couple different species of langurs. So we have Lao langur, which is only found in this country. We also have Indo-Chinese gray langurs. We have some turtle and tortoise species, yellow-headed temple turtle, keeled box turtle, elongated tortoise, and we also have some deer species as well. We have what we hope are Indo-Chinese hog deer. We have to do some genetic testing on them to confirm this. We also have samba deer, we have Indian muntjac, and our bears. Like I mentioned, we have 19 moon bears and we have two sun bears. And we also have one binturong as well, which is a very cool animal. It smells like popcorn. And I think that covers most of them. If I forgot someone, I apologize to them. But yeah, for the most part, that's what we have at the moment. Yeah.
No Sowler.
No, Sala, unfortunately, yes. We have joked before that we could get in some good funding if we painted a goat and from far away we told people it was a Sala and we're like, yeah, yeah, but we need like $1 million to support the conservation for this species. But unfortunately, we're I guess ethical here, so and probably wouldn't fool anyone, let's be honest, but still.
Uh, Jeremy, what issues would you like to see addressed in Siamese crocodile conservation over the next 5 years?
I think the biggest issue is probably habitat protection. I think obviously if you don't have the habitat to release the animals, then there's not really much to a conservation breeding program. And I think there's, of course, there's always a lot to do to protect habitats. And then on the kind of same side of that, of course, with human influence is the hunting. So just being able to curb that pressure on the crocodiles, because of course that's always a risk when you're releasing animals, especially when you're working in a country where, the wildlife trade is very high, where a lot of the animals have already been hunted, they're critically endangered, a lot of them are facing extinction, whether it's local extinction in different parts of the country where they used to be widespread, or whether it's complete extinction throughout the whole country. So I think, yeah, more protection for sure in terms of also the hunting side of things. So both habitat and hunting pressures, I think, would be a really big plus for Siamese crocodile conservation for sure.
Jeremy, what jobs might such a situation developing over the next 5 years result in?
Um, if we're talking about local people, because that's one of the things that we really want to get going, of course, is to support, local livelihoods here in the country and get their buy-in for protecting, Siamese crocodiles. Then we're looking at people helping to protect these animals, people doing biodiversity surveys of the areas where we may be releasing them so that we can see, what are the prey items there, what are any other potential predators that could be around the areas. For most of the crocodiles we're going to be releasing, they're going to be larger, so there's not really going to be any natural predators outside of humans that are probably going to take them. Maybe a very large python or something could take a meter long crocodile, but I think for the most part, there's not much that's really gonna take them out, at least in the areas where we will be releasing them. So yeah, I think in terms of local people and hiring them, it's a lot of getting them engaged, getting them part of protecting the crocodiles, helping to manage the wetland areas where they are, helping us with outreach programs, kind of being, the stewards of the wetlands and having them be part of what we're doing. And yeah, have them take ownership over it, because at the end of the day, we need them to be the ones to want to protect the crocodiles, not just us from afar saying, "Oh yeah, we should save this species." So yeah, really to get their buy-in and hopefully to give them some jobs and assisting us with the protection of the crocs.
Jeremy, can you suggest a research project for a new entrant who is a student watching this?
Yeah, I think in terms of, I guess I'll speak in terms of crocodiles since it's kind of what we've, been talking about a bit. But of course, surveys, biodiversity surveys, um, in the wetlands where there's potential for release of these crocodiles. This is obviously crucial information because you have to know if it's sustainable to even release a crocodile in a wetland. If all the fish are gone and there's nothing for the animals to prey on, then there's not really a point in releasing these animals there. And then also probably just surveys as well with the local people. I think talking to the local people, understanding, were there crocodiles there in the past? How long has it been since the people have seen them? What are people's feelings towards crocodiles? Are they scared of them? Do they feel like they're an important part of the ecosystem? Would they be interested in having them back in the ecosystem where they may, get a lot of their livelihood, whether it's from fishing or maybe some ecotourism or something like this. So I think a lot of the research could be done with that. There's also if you looked at our captive crocodiles as well, you could look at the behavior, the mating behavior of our captive crocodiles. From what I've understood, talking to croc experts, that our crocodiles mate a bit earlier in captivity than they do in the wild, which is really interesting, even here in Laos. So we're in the same climate, same everything, but ours are still have a little bit of a different breeding period, which is really interesting. So potentially looking at the differences in this um, research on vocalizations. We have an acoustic recorder right now, partnering with our friends over at WCS. So we have an acoustic recorder in our enclosure to record the vocalizations from our crocodiles so that they can help to analyze those and look at them. Yeah, I think there's quite a lot that can be done. It's just, yeah, what's the interest of the student and what would they, be passionate about doing? And yeah, of course, there's also husbandry practices. So how we take care of our babies once they're hatched, the diet we're giving them, the difference in size, because we have quite a size variation, even though they may be hatched from the same month. So yeah, looking at things like this would definitely be very interesting and helpful for sure for conservation.
Jeremy, if somebody is writing a proposal for funding, can you give any advice on one vital piece of information they should include in a proposal or ask?
I think a lot of the proposals that even we're writing at the moment, a lot of it, we're needing to make sure that we're including local communities because I think that is not only what a lot of granting organizations or donors are looking for, that you're involving local communities into your projects, but also it's just important that you are doing that because, of course, we can sit here and we can have a really nice proposal for releasing crocodiles back into the wild. But if you don't have the local communities buy in and you don't have not just the community, but maybe the government and everyone on board with this, then you're just setting yourself up for failure. So I think definitely in grant proposals, working into there about what you're going to do for the community, how you're going to help improve livelihoods, to offset that hunting that's going on, to help protect the habitat, all of that kind of is worked around this community value. Yeah.
Jeremy, you are the director of Lao Conservation Trust for Wildlife. Thank you so much for being on the Practical Animal Channel. Jeremy Fan.
Thank you so much. It was a pleasure to be here.